ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायण नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. Text number 1 and 2. Devahūtiruvacha Lakshanam Mahadadinam Lakshanam Mahadadinam Lakshanam Mahadadinam Prakritehe Purushasya Cha Prakrite Purushasya Cha Prakrite Purushasya Cha Swarupam Lakshyate Amisham Swarupam Lakshyate Amisham Swarupam Lakshyate Amisham Ena Tat Paramartikam Ena Tat Paramartikam Ena Tat Paramartikam Yatha Sāṅkheshu Katitam Yatha Sāṅkheshu Katitam Yatha Sāṅkheshu Katitam Yat Moolanam Tat Prachakshate Yanmoolam Tat Prachakshate Yanmoolam Tat Prachakshate Bhakti Yogasya Me Margam Bhakti Yogasya Me Margam Bhakti Yogasya Me Margam Bruhi Vistarashaha Prabho Bruhi Vistarasha Prabho Bruhi Vistarasha Prabho Devahūtiruvacha Lakshanam Mahadadinam Prakrite Purushasya Cha Swarupam Lakshyate Amisham Yena Tat Paramartikam Yata Sāṅkheshu Katitam Yanmoolam Tat Prachakshate Bhakti Yogasya Me Margam Bruhi Vistarasha Prabho Devahūtiruvacha Lakshanam Mahadadinam Prakrite Purushasya Cha Swarupam Lakshyate Amisham Yena Tat Paramartikam Yatha Sāṅkheshu Katitam Yanmoolam Tat Prachakshate Bhakti Yogasya Me Margam Bruhi Vistarasha Prabho Devahūti Uvacha. Devahūti said, Lakshanam, symptoms, Mahat Adinam, of the Mahat Tattva, and so on. Prakritehe, of material nature. Purushasya, of the spirit. Cha, and Swarupam, the nature. Lakshyate is described. Amisham, of those. Ena, by which. Tat parama artikam, the true nature of them. Yata, as. Sāṅkhyeshu, in Sāṅkhya philosophy. Khatitam is explained. Yat, of which. Moolam, ultimate end. Tat, that. Prachakshate, they call. Bhakti yogasya, of devotional service. Me, to me. Margam, the path. Bruhi, please explain. Vistarashaha, at length. Prabho, my dear Lord Kapila. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swamy Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Devahūti inquired, my dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sāṅkhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Kindly repeat. Devahūti inquired, my dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sāṅkhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this 29th chapter, the glories of devotional service are elaborately explained, and the influence of time on the conditioned soul is also described. The purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the spirit, and the Supreme Lord or Super Soul are analytically studied, and in this chapter, the principles of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of Godhead are explained. Bhakti Yoga devotional service is the basic principle of all systems of philosophy. All philosophy which does not aim for devotional service to the Lord is considered merely mental speculation. But of course, Bhakti Yoga with no philosophical basis is more or less sentiment. There are two classes of men. Some consider themselves intellectually advanced and simply speculate and meditate. And others are sentimental who have no philosophical basis for their propositions. Neither of these can achieve the highest goal of life, or if they do, it will take them many years. Vedic literature therefore suggests that there are three elements, namely the Supreme Lord, the living entity, and their eternal relationship, and the goal of life is to follow the principles of bhakti or devotional service and ultimately attain to the planet of the Supreme Lord in full devotion and love as an eternal servitor of the Lord. Sāṅkhya philosophy is an analytical study of all existence. One has to understand everything by examining its nature and characteristics. This is called acquirement of knowledge. But one should not simply acquire knowledge without reaching the goal of life or the basic principle of acquiring knowledge, Bhakti Yoga. If we give up Bhakti Yoga and simply busy ourselves in the analytical study of the nature of things as they are, then the result will be practically nil. It is stated in Bhagavatam that such engagement is something like husking a paddy. There is no use beating the husk if the grain has already been removed. By the scientific study of material nature, the living entity and the super soul, one has to understand the basic principle of devotional service to the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimiraandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamy Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaurvani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarne. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srimāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this third canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it's a conversation between Lord Kapila and his mother, Devahūti. In this chapter, Lord Kapila will be explaining about the devotional service to his mother, Devahūti. As in this verse, Devahūti, mother of Lord Kapila, is inquiring, stating that you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristic of spirit according to Sāṅkhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. So, basically, Sāṅkhya philosophy is study of Prakriti and Purusha, where they address Purusha as the soul. Soul is addressed as Purusha. And it's an analytical study of both soul and the material nature. And in the previous chapter or previous chapters, Lord Kapila had explained about analytical study about the soul and Prakriti. And Devahūti is stating here that you already described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to Sāṅkhya system of philosophy. And in the purport also Prabhupada explains the purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which is considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the spirit and the Supreme Lord or Super Soul are analytically studied. And this chapter, the principles of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of Godhead are explained. Prabhupada is giving the summary of this chapter in this first paragraph. So, Sāṅkhya Yoga, it's a combination of two words, Sāṅkhya and Yoga. Sāṅkhya means analytical study of, as the name only states, Sāṅkhya means Sāṅkhya, numeric, analytical study of the material nature and about the soul. And basically it describes about 24 elements of the material nature. And the 25th is considered to be the soul. And The main aim of Sāṅkhya philosophy to analytically study the material nature and the characteristic of the soul and to discriminate between the two. Sāṅkhya philosophy aim is Viveka Gnana. Viveka Gnana means to discriminative knowledge. Discriminative knowledge between matter and spirit. So for that, it gives a complete description about matter. 24 elements are described or are been very intensely studied, and then they make a complete discrimination between matter and spirit. And after understanding about the spirit, they try to become liberated. They understand that the soul is not of this, does not belong to this material nature. The soul is eternal and matter is not eternal. So, soul does not belong to this material nature, and the aim of soul is to get liberated from the material nature. So, they usually aim at Kaivalya. But what Lord Kapila describes in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is not about Kaivalya, but it is about devotional aspect. And in Sāṅkhya philosophy, the achievement of liberation, they adopt the process of Ashtanga Yoga. So, it is connected. Ashtanga Yoga is a part of Sāṅkhya Yoga. Sāṅkhya philosophy and Yoga, what it states is connecting with the Lord, Supreme Lord. And that they adopt the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And that's why even in the previous chapter, in the 28th chapter, Lord Kapila describes about Ashtanga Yoga. After describing about the Sāṅkhya philosophy, he is describing about the Ashtanga Yoga. But Devahūti is further inquiring the Lord to explain about Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. And she also states that I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. So, either any of the yoga system we follow, the ultimate end, it culminates with Bhakti Yoga. Even in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna explains about the performance of yajna and all those things, 3rd and 4th chapter, he explains about the performance of yajna. But at the end of 4th chapter, Krishna says, the performance of our yajnas culminates in knowledge, culminates in jnana. Then jnana culminates with Sāṅkhya philosophy. Sāṅkhya philosophy culminates with Ashtanga Yoga. And in Ashtanga Yoga, when Krishna explains about the part of Sāṅkhya Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, in 6th chapter, Krishna explains Yoginam api sarvesham madgater antaratmana. So, because Ashtanga Yoga is part of Sāṅkhya Yoga, Prabhupada mentions 6th chapter as Sāṅkhya Yoga. Prabhupada never mentions it as Ashtanga Yoga, although many of them states it as Ashtanga Yoga. Because it is the end of Jnana Yoga, Sāṅkhya Yoga is Ashtanga Yoga. And here also we study that Lord Kapila, after explaining all about Sāṅkhya philosophy, is explaining about Ashtanga Yoga. And after Ashtanga Yoga, Devahūti is inquiring, tell me more about Bhakti Yoga. which is the ultimate end of all yoga system. So, in the Sāṅkhya philosophy, the 24 elements that they study is about Prakriti. The first element is Prakriti, or the unmanifest nature. Unmanifest nature means there are so many things happening in this material nature: seasonal changes, growth, transformations. All these are caused by a superior energy. Superior means a controlling energy, which is unmanifested. And that unmanifested nature is Prakriti. It's the energy of the Lord which is controlling the whole material nature. And it comprises of the 3 gunas, the 24 elements, and everything. So that energy is the main. Shri Shri Radha Govind. And beyond that, and after the material nature is the soul. The characteristic, the 25th element, as it describes, is about the soul. Apart from these two, there are the gross elements. 5 gross elements. What are they? Bhumi apo analo vayu khammano buddhirevacha. Gross and subtle elements, both Krishna describes there, but gross is Bhumi apa analo vayu kham. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And these are 5 gross elements, and there are 5 senses, 5 sense objects, 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and 5 working senses. So, and 3 subtle elements. So, all these comprise together to 24 elements. And in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asks Krishna about first of all, you ask me to renounce work. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi yat shreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. O Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So here Arjuna is asking about, in the 4th chapter, Krishna explains about work with devotion, and also in the 3rd chapter Krishna explains initially about the sannyasa. So Arjuna is getting confused and he is asking, you ask me to renounce work and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the blessed Lord said, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So here Krishna is explaining that renunciation of work and work in devotion both are good for liberation. But of the two, devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Work in devotional service, that is karma yoga, is better than renunciation of the work, is what Krishna is telling. And coming to the next verse, in the 4th verse, Krishna explains, Sāṅkhya yoga pratak balaha pravadanti na panditaha ekamapi astitha samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. Only the ignorant speak of karma yoga and devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sāṅkhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieve the results of both. Krishna is telling here that ignorant speak that Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and devotional service, that is Bhakti Yoga, as being different from the analytical study of material world, that is Sāṅkhya philosophy. But actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieve the results of both. Either you follow Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga or Sāṅkhya philosophy, you will reach the same destination, is what Krishna is telling. Because as described by Kapila, Lord Kapila in the Bhagavatam, Sāṅkhya Yoga also at the end it describes about realizing the Supreme. Sāṅkhya Yoga also culminates with realization of the Supreme. And Bhakti Yoga, of course, it is about realization of the Self and the Supreme. In Sāṅkhya Yoga, they will first analytically study the whole material nature. They will understand the characteristic of the soul. They will have a discriminative knowledge. And then they take to the path of Ashtanga Yoga. And in Ashtanga Yoga, they start meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma. And then realize the Supreme. But in Bhakti Yoga, they will directly take to the process of realizing the Supreme, understanding the nature of the soul. There is no need to indirect way going around and come back to this goal. From the starting only, they will take to the process of devotional service, understanding the nature of the soul, understanding the soul, Supreme, and then getting connected with that Supreme is what Bhakti Yoga is. So Krishna says, both are same, but only the ignorant speak that they are different. We'll just read the purport, how Prabhupada describes it. The aim of analytical study of material world is to find the soul of existence. The aim of analytical study, Sāṅkhya Yoga, is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu or the Super Soul. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the Super Soul. One process is to find the root of the tree and the next to water the root. Sāṅkhya Yoga is to find the root of the tree, research, work. And the other process is to water the root. The real student of Sāṅkhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages himself in the service of the Lord. So first he engages in finding out the root and then he engages in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two because the aim of both is Vishnu. Either Sāṅkhya philosophy or Bhakti Yoga aim is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sāṅkhya and Karma Yoga are not the same. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. So those who are ignorant, avidya, those who do not know knowledge about the real purpose of Sāṅkhya Yoga, they say that it is different. Sāṅkhya Yoga and Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga are different. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. In the next verse again. Yat Sāṅkhya prapyate sthanam tad yogair api gamyate ekam Sāṅkhyam cha yogam cha hya pashyati sa pashyati. One who knows that the position reached by means of renunciation can also be attained by works in devotional service, and who therefore sees that the path of works and the path of renunciation are one, sees things as they are. So one who knows the position reached by the means of renunciation can also be attained by the work in devotional service. Whatever achievement one wants to achieve by renouncing the world can also be achieved by practicing Karma Yoga. And after understanding that path, he will never renounce the work. Because he will understand whatever we can achieve by renouncing the world can also be achieved by Karma Yoga. Then why you should renounce the work? Who therefore sees that the path of works and the path of renunciation are one, sees things as they are. Purport. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there is no difference between the conclusion reached by the two processes. Since the goal is same, there is no difference between conclusion reached by the both. By Sāṅkhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the Supreme Spirit whole. So by analytical study, Sāṅkhya philosophy, they will come to the conclusion that soul is nothing to do with the material world. It is related with the Supreme Spirit. Consequently, the Spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relation with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position. In the first process of Sāṅkhya, one has to become detached from matter. And in the devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna. So by understanding the Sāṅkhya philosophy, one should get detached from the matter. And that after getting detached from matter, one should get attached to Krishna. Or work for Krishna. Actually, both processes are the same. Although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and other process appears to involve attachment, however, detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see this sees things as they are. So detachment from matter cannot happen unless you get attached to Krishna. Because that attachment is always there for the soul. The soul always wants to get attached to something. That is the reason when the soul is in the body, it gets attached to this body. It gets so attached that the consciousness thinks that I'm not different from this body, I'm this body. The real nature, the real existence, I am this soul also, that consciousness will not be able to understand. It will get so attached to the body. But once we get the knowledge of the ultimate, and when we serve the Lord, when we get the knowledge about the Supreme, when we serve the Lord, we gradually get detached from the material activities. And by practicing devotional service, it will be easy for us to get detached from the material world and get attached to Krishna. If there is nothing to get attached and we just constantly try to detach, it is a difficult process. Because the soul always hankers for something to get attached. And that attachment, actually, the soul is always hankering towards the Supreme Lord Krishna. But unless and until that Supreme is not connected with the soul, complete detachment from the material world is not possible. So that is the reason even the impersonalist, when they do meditation and when they try to get renounced from this material world, they get attached to Brahman. They get attached to become one with the Lord, one with the Brahman. It is not that they get detached without anything. It is not possible. So that detachment we should develop only by getting attached to Krishna. And in Bhakti Yoga, it is very easily can be done. The more we get attached to Krishna, the more we automatically get detached from material. Prabhupada gives the example. The percentage you are getting attached to Krishna, the percentage you are getting detached from material things. And Prabhupada says, if you are materially attached 80%, and you are just 20% attached to Krishna. If you are materially 50% attached, then your 50% attachment is towards Krishna. If you have material attachment 20%, then we have material Krishna attachment 80%. If we don't get attached to anything material, then we can have 10% attachment towards Krishna. So if we want to achieve that 10% attachment towards Krishna, we should try to detach from the material world by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Because any other process we take, it's an indirect process. Any other yoga process, it's an indirect process. But in the Bhakti Yoga, it's a direct process, directly getting attached to Krishna. In the other philosophy, like we studied here in the Sāṅkhya philosophy, it is getting detached from my material world, and after getting detached, you try to get attached to Supreme. So, Bhakti Yoga is a direct process where you simultaneously get detached from the material world and get attached to Krishna. And that detachment also is not like Markata Vairagya. That detachment is also our acharyas have described as Nirbandhe Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagyam Uchyate. That detachment is engaging everything in the service of the Lord. Because Prabhupada explains, nothing is belonging to you. Nothing belongs to you. When nothing belongs to you, how can you detach? We will not go in front of a big palace and say, I will renounce this palace. Then who will ask, who gave you first to that palace to you, for you to renounce? So, engaging whatever we get on the path of devotion in the service of the Lord is perfect renunciation. And that is what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita also. Work in devotion, engaging everything in the service of the Lord. So, Devahūti knew about this philosophy of detachment from the material world. She knew about the devotional aspects. But she just wanted to inquire. She inquired from her son, Lord Kapila, to hear it about from him more, and so that she get more attached to the Lord. Because the more we hear, the more we get attached to the Lord. The more we hear about the glorification of the Lord, the more we hear about the names of the Lord, the more we speak about the glories of the Lord, the more we chant about the names of the Lord, the more we get attached to the Lord. That is the nature of the conditioned soul. It gets conditioned to what we practice. If we practice material activities, we think of something, we contemplate on something material, we get attached to that. And if we contemplate on the Supreme Lord, we hear about the Supreme Lord, we glorify the Supreme Lord, we get attached to the Supreme Lord Krishna. That is the reason of so much of glorification is there in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, so that we constantly hear about the glories of the Lord. And by hearing, we get attached to the Lord. So, Devahūti, with that aspect of understanding more about devotional service and getting attached to the Lord, she is inquiring here from her son to explain more about the devotional service. And we'll see in the future verses how the Lord explains about devotional service. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.